times. Queer times. Queer times.
Queers in. Welcome to Queer Times. My name is Kristen Becker.
And I'm Harrison Fish.
These are the Queer Times. No, these are Queer Times.
Yeah.
And we have breaking news for this week. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So last week's episode, we talked all about women's sports.
Yeah.
And we did record that 2 months ago.
Yes.
But there has been so many things that have happened in the world of women's sports since then. But specifically this week, there's been so many things happening. We're filming this on the Friday before this episode is released. But tonight/last Friday is the opening games for this year's WNBA season.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Are we going to watch together?
Yeah, I kind of want to watch the Fever Chicago game tomorrow/last Saturday.
What time?
I don't know.
Okay.
It might even be during the day.
All right. Okay, great.
But as the season has been getting going, there's a lot of things happening. Let's talk about some of the positives first. First of all, I think this might be the first time that all of the preseason games were streamed live and free on WNBA League Pass and also on television. They have a new deal with, I think, Ion TV.
Okay.
Where they're showing up a lot of their games, which is incredible. It's like, how can you have fans if the fans can't watch it? So I think this is a really great thing moving forward in expanding the culture. And what's really fun about the preseason games is they're not typically playing their starting five. Because the goal isn't to win per se, it's to
work it out. I think all sports are the same, right?
Yeah.
If you're tuning into the NFL, you know the preseason game, you're going to see the starting QB for the first quarter.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Just enough to make sure that everything's loosened up, make sure that the teamwork is there. It's about chemistry. It's about seeing what the other team has to offer.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things about the WNBA specifically, and what is being talked about a lot right now, is that they're saying it is one of the hardest sports in the world to make roster. And we've seen that over the past couple weeks. So the WNBA draft happened right after the end of the NCAA tournament. And typically each team will have about 15, 16, 17 players in their training camp. And all the teams have to have 12 or less players on their final roster before the season starts.
There are 156 total roster spots available.
Right.
So out of all of the colleges, all of the people, all of the women who are playing, there are only 156 spots.
Yeah.
In the
It's
world
wild.
for the
Yeah.
WNBA. Yeah.
So a lot of people's favorites after watching them in college will be drafted. And then, I mean, I think only if you look at the draft class from like 2 or 3 years ago, there's maybe 5, 6, 7, or 8 players still in the league because it's so difficult to make a roster spot.
If the WNBA has 156 roster spots, the NBA has 560 players.
Yeah.
So
that's because they have bigger rosters, they have more teams, and also the thing about the NBA is they have a G League, which is basically like a what's the word? Like a
it's a minor league.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
AAA.
Yeah, their hurt players will rehab in the G League, or they'll stash some players there to see if they can work it out. And the thing about
or Bronny James will live there his whole career.
Wow, drag him.
I'm kidding. I love it.
So Kate Martin. So Kate Martin was kind of the other player on Iowa besides Caitlyn Clark.
Okay.
She's truly an incredible basketball player, but I think her closeness to her proximity to Caitlyn Clark served her well. She was drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round last year. She onto the Las Vegas Aces. The Golden State Valkyrie picked her up as one of their expansion.
You think it
picks.
served her well because she looked like a better player for having played with Caitlyn Clark?
No.
Because my first thought would have been, oh, then you're in someone's shadow the whole time. And you, other than this phenom, you would have been the best. Would she have been the best player on the team had she not been playing with Caitlyn Clark?
Maybe, but I don't think the team would have been very good.
Okay.
The thing, I'm not saying she is an incredible basketball player, and I do what I mean when I say her proximity to Caitlyn Clark. Caitlyn Clark has a lot of fans,
right?
And then there's Kate Martin, her bestie, who's there. People started to love her because they were watching the game, and she has a lot of fans. I might get canceled for saying this, but almost like a Kelly Rowland Beyonce thing. We love Kelly Rowland, but if she wasn't in a group with Beyonce, would she be as famous as she is now?
But yes, no,
Right.
she would not. She
Right.
would not. She would not. She would not.
But so, and I kind of was like, oh, the Valkyries want to lean into like having a fan favorite, get some eyes on them. And I think that's really great. I don't think if Kate Martin was not on a team with Caitlin Clark, I feel like she would have had a really incredible basketball career through the NCAA. And I feel like it probably would have ended there, or she might have gone overseas to play, but I don't think she would necessarily be in the league. She is amazing. I'm not saying she's bad or anything. Then the Golden State Valkyries drafted Caitlyn Chen. Caitlyn Chen, I feel like, is almost another similar thing. She did most of her college career at Princeton.
Yes.
Most of her undergraduate career, or most of her undergrad at Princeton, she got her degree there. And for her 5th year of eligibility, she transferred to the University of Connecticut. And the fandom there just fell in love with her.
Yeah.
And I think it's another situation like her proximity to AZ Fudd and Paige Beckers and the UConn organization as a whole. She came to the draft to support Paige Beckers, who was the expected first draft pick, which she was, and ended up getting drafted as well.
Yes.
And there's all these clips of people celebrating that and Paige Beckers being so excited for that because Paige Beckers is the coolest person in the world. And so she got drafted by the Golden State Valkyries as well. And I was like, that makes sense. They're going to do the same thing again. They're like, oh, that's so smart. They're going to do a team of fan favorites because an expansion team typically has a few years to really get going. So I imagined they were like, oh, we're not going to be the best team at the beginning. So let's get fans a different way.
Right.
So I figured Kate Martin, Caitlyn Chen, and I was really excited. Caitlyn Chen went to training camp. They had her throw out the first pitch at a Giants game. They really pushed her. Her jersey was the best-selling Valkyries jersey you could get. And they really lauded the fact that she was the first Taiwanese player ever in the WNBA. Right. And especially in the Bay Area, I think it's 30 or 40% Asian Americans living in the Bay Area. Yeah, and I was like, this all makes sense. This is amazing. And then typically as training camp happens, you'll get announcements, roster updates, and they'll be like, thank you so much to this person. They were absolutely incredible, but they didn't make a roster spot. We look forward to looking at you in the future, and we wish you all the best. But the Golden State...
Wait, so if you don't make the roster... Oh, the roster, not the starting lineup.
No, the roster.
The team.
Yeah.
You didn't make the team.
Yeah, these teams typically
She didn't make the team.
No. Well, and the way they didn't announce it in the way they typically announced players, which is here's Caitlyn Chen, a picture of her. Thank you so much. You didn't make roster, unfortunately. And instead, they just released their final roster, and people had to find out that Caitlyn Chen didn't make it simply by the omission of her name on that list.
Did they do that? Thank you so much. Good luck in the future, deuces post for the other people who didn't make the roster.
Yeah, they did an announcement waiving Cheyenne Sellers, which was earlier. And a lot of fans are very upset. You look at any of the Golden State Valkyries TikTok videos or their Instagram posts, and every single comment, it was like, I was a fan until you dropped Caitlyn Chen. Wow. And people are feeling like they used her. They had her come in, really propped her up, used her notoriety, her identity to get eyes on them, and then didn't end up taking her. And the thing is, I haven't mulled this over enough to know where I fully stand on it, but a lot of these teams, they have 12 players on the roster, and 2 or 3 of them play 5-10 minutes the whole season. I don't quite understand why they didn't just put Caitlyn Chen on the team. And I know that might be, what I mean when I say I haven't really thought it through is like, that is taking it away from someone else who could be a better player. You know what I mean?
I guess I have a few questions. Is there any opportunity because I actually don't understand how the WNBA works in trades and et cetera, et cetera. Is she now a free agent? Could another team pick her up? Have the Valkyries maybe been in discussion with another team? Like, I'm wondering because if so, the Valkyries selling those jerseys, I don't know. I'm wondering if this is a developing story in that, Caitlyn, they're going to get this media. Because, I mean, even a hate like is a like. A hate share is a share.
Right.
And that is the media age we live in now, right? So the idea that they stirred up controversy Doesn't surprise me.
That is an interesting question, and there is some information around that. So yes, we just brought up Cheyenne Sellers, who we said was waived for the Valkyries. She was waived much earlier, and the Atlanta Dream basically pulled her into the training camp at the Atlanta Dream.
Okay.
So basically, she flew out to Atlanta, worked into their training camp with the opportunity to make their final roster
Prior to them announcing their final roster.
But the Valkyries, like I said, didn't give Caitlyn Chen a roster update, and they kind of did it so late that most other teams had already announced their roster as well.
So there was nothing left.
Yeah. There's an opportunity. I think she basically stays in the Valkyries training camp. Like, she could be pulled into training camp again next year.
Well, I mean, that's my question is like.
So there was another player who commented on a TikTok video and be like, she wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I also understand. But, and I wonder if this is a problematic viewpoint. I think the WNBA, as they learn and grow and try to bring in a bigger fan base, should they be prioritizing people with huge fan bases?
A DEF hire, a diversity, equity, and fan base hire.
Yeah.
Like, here are my questions. How much did she get paid for the time spent?
No idea.
Does she receive a cut of those jerseys?
No.
Really?
That's one of the biggest contention points in the WNBA right now. And Kelsey Plum has spoken up a lot about this, who's a new player on the LA Sparks. She is like, I'm not trying to get paid the same amount as LeBron. I want the same percentage as LeBron.
Right.
They get a percentage of their jersey sales. The WNBA does not, because all of these agreements were put in place well before
anybody got famous.
This huge increase in viewership and fandom. And now Kelsey Plum's jersey is selling out, Paige Becker's, Caitlin Clark, and they don't get any of that money.
When you say that, I hear that the negotiations between the team and the brand may have been established, right? So Nike and the Valkyries may have had their deal, and it's a 10-year deal. And
I think the WNBA has a deal with.
Okay, sure. So the WNBA has a deal with Nike, etc. The team's decision to profit share amongst their players should be able to change every year, right? That would be my Like I don't think that holds water. Well, this was negotiated before they got famous, right? But we live in 2025,
right?
And it doesn't take a man or a person riding horseback across country to tell you about a thing. We could be able to move at a little bit of a quicker pace, and because if that were the case, if it's like, hey, we're gonna give you a shot, and it didn't work out, but you made a pile of money from us selling jerseys with your name on it, and
right. So basically, that is all part of the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA.
Yep.
The CBA is an agreement between the WNBA and the WNBA Players Association outlining the terms and condition of employment for players. So all of that is a part of it. The current CBA, agreed upon in January 2020, was scheduled to expire at the end of the 2024 season, but the WNBA, the Players Association, opted to terminate it at the end of the 2025 season.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if they were like, let's see what more momentum we can get behind it.
Oh, right. Like, this is growing. Let's not cash out now.
Yeah.
Let's ride it for one more year, make this even more popular, and have a stronger bargaining chip when they go to the table. Okay.
I will say something about the WNBA as a fan. I cannot stand the commissioner. It's this woman named Kathy Engelbert. And I feel like she's the one who needs to go if they want the WNBA to succeed. Like we've talked about last week, the Unrivaled blew up and they asked her about it. And I'm summarizing the vibe, but the vibe was like, oh, it was so cute that they did that.
Yeah, that is giving woman hating woman. Instead of being like, I think it's great that our players have an opportunity to actually make money playing the game they love. And technically, I'm excited that Unrivaled is subsidizing my players.
Right.
Like that would have been a fun answer, you know?
It's just over and over again. Like I know the final game of the WNBA finals last year was in New York, but she wore a New York themed dress to the game. when it's the New York Liberty against the Minnesota Lynx.
So
It
you
just seems
think that
biased
as
as a commissioner.
commissioner, okay, all
As
right.
commissioner, wear any other dress. Any other dress. Okay,
let's
just
see.
one more thing before we move on
Yeah,
from the WNBA. You know,
Yeah.
I could talk about this for hours.
I know.
Really exciting potentially for me and us.
Ooh.
So this past week, the Connecticut Sun sought out a financial institution in assisting them with the sale of the Connecticut Sun. A sale might potentially come with a relocation
to Boston.
to somewhere, but I'm hoping Boston. Maura Healey this past March in an interview said that she thinks Boston is an amazing market. They deserve to have one, and that they are a team. They are a city that should have a women's basketball team, and I fully agree. I didn't know that Maura Healey was a professional basketball player at one point.
Is she tall?
Yeah, she played 4 years at Harvard and then 2 years in Austria professionally.
Do you think when you just said Harvard, I was like, do you think that did Caitlyn Chen get a degree from Princeton and then transfer?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, because there was one minute I was like, dang, I guess if I went and got a UConn degree, no disrespect to UConn, and not a Princeton degree, and then I didn't make the team, it would be sticky.
I think she ended up getting I'm not positive, but I think she got another degree or her master's or something.
Okay.
I would love to have a women's basketball team in Boston.
And what would you call it, Harrison?
Okay, I think a lot of times, less in recent years, but they often like kind of pair it with the MNBA team that is in the city. I'm trying to think of an example. Like the Charlotte Hornets, I think was an MNBA team.
It was.
And the Charlotte team was the Charlotte Sting.
Okay.
So I'm thinking Boston Celtics, MNBA, Boston Luck.
Pint? Oh, sorry.
Yes, Boston Pint. I'm into that.
No, sorry. What did you say?
The Boston Luck.
I like it.
Yeah.
The
I think that'd be
Boston Luck.
cute. Yeah.
Luck be a lady. Wow.
Perfect. It's
Wow,
perfect.
Wow. Okay. All right. So fingers crossed for the Boston Luck.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm going to have to work for that organization if they come to Boston somehow.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that's a job for a man. I love it. You're like, I can't wait till we get a WNBA team so I can get a job. No, it's not for you.
I would love to work in the organization of that.
All right.
In like the promotion, the marketing.
Well, you would be great in any organization. We started an organization together right here.
True.
Look at that. I believe in you.
We're just going to have to start releasing like 2 episodes a week and one of them being about women's sports.
I think that you're going to start a TikTok where you hop on our account and give a WNBA update twice a week.
I'm into that.
I think that's the best use of all of this information. Because and then I'll watch them and learn, and I'll know what to talk about when we get here.
Yeah.
And I just want to put this out there that the WNBA League Pass is $34.99 a year. It is incredibly affordable. And even if you're not a WNBA fan, but you like ladies, you should probably just get a WNBA League Pass. And if it's not your vibe, find some broke lesbian, give her your login. Do you know what I mean? And so if you can spend $35 a year on something that will have a direct impact on the future of women in sports, I think this is a great time to do that. So I'm going to do that.
And also, like, if you're thinking even there's a tiny bit of an idea that you might want to get into women's sports, reach out, see if anyone you know is into it, and watch a game with them. It is contagious. I took one of my friends, Eden, to an Unrivaled game, and she was like, "Oh, I don't know." Blah, blah, blah. By the time the end of it, she's like, "I love this."
Yeah. Live sports there's a reason why it's popular, and particularly in a time when you need a distraction from what's going on in the world, I find sports to be a great distraction.
And also, she was like 60% watching the game, 40% checking out the hot players.
Correct.
She really had a
hot audience.
She really had a thing for the referees.
I was going to say, no, the refs get people.
She was like, I don't know that I've been in a space that has this high percentage of hot lesbians.
And it's just, there's a lot less people yelling, very good.
Yeah.
There's just
Zero.
a lot. There's like a lot less of that. And it's an enjoyable sport experience. So we covered breaking news about the WNBA. We're rolling into our 5th episode. Is this episode 5?
Episode 5.
We talk about the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Make sure you like and follow and subscribe. Do us a favor this week. just share that you like this podcast.
Yeah.
Just like go on your socials,
Your Facebook.
your whatever it is you do, give it a little share. Tell people you're enjoying it. We are very grassroots. We need all the help we can get, but we're having a great time. We want to keep doing it.
Yeah. And everyone who does listen says they enjoy it. So
We're
if
getting
you're
really great
sharing,
feedback.
You're sharing something that other people will enjoy.
You're technically giving them a gift.
Yeah.
So give the
Literally.
give the gift
And us a gift.
of us.
Yeah.
Give the gift of us and we'll receive the gift of
Yes.
us.
Yeah.
Okay, bye. Queer is in. Welcome back. It's the Queer Times.
Yeah, welcome back to Queer Times.
Welcome back to Queer Times.
Okay, today our topic is the Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party.
I grew up where my father very much was like, I'm not a member of a party. I every time will do my research, do my due diligence, and vote for the person who I think is best. But I do think at around 2005 when I was in high school, he said, but it's been a very long time since I voted for a Republican.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of still stays true for my parents. I'm lucky enough to have very kind of left-leaning liberal parents. The arguments me and my dad have about politics tend to be both coming from the left. Like, luckily, I don't have to argue with my dad about Trump things, but we get to argue about like the best way to implement healthcare for all.
I had a pretty democratic union upbringing. Moved to Louisiana and was still pretty union. Our base was union. My dad worked for GM,
Right.
union blue collar workers who are now Trumpers for reasons.
Interesting.
Number one, older. Number two, Fox News and living in Shreveport, Louisiana for a long time, I think really was part of it, but mostly the last 20 years probably. So, you know, there's been a lot of watching television and watching Fox News, and it's what old white guys do.
Yeah.
And now, you know, and like I want to say that without being condescending, because you know, you don't want to be like, wow, really? That's you believe all that? We don't really talk about politics in my house, in my family anymore. My sister and I are pretty aligned. I don't need to be aligned with people that I love and respect. I don't need to be aligned with them. But I certainly don't have to like their choices or hang out with people who think that I'm less than.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very lucky and I would say privileged to not have had to be confronted with like, who do I want to keep in my life? Who has different views than me? The family that is on the periphery that kind of is more in line with the right and Trump kind of found themselves out before any of this went down for other reasons. I mean, I remember in high school when it was the kind of, I was in civics class. It must have been around the 2004 election. And I remember, obviously, we're talking a lot about it in class. And it was my first big confrontation. I was like, wow, everyone around me is a Republican. I grew up in Connecticut, but in a very rural area of Connecticut. A lot of farm industry in that area. And all the kids in my class, there was, out of the 25 of us, there was maybe 10 people who seemed to be more Democrat leaning. And then the other 15 were Republican leaning. And I remember I was flabbergasted. And and mostly because I was looking at what the party stood for. And I was like, why would you like that? You know? And I remember I created like a quiz. I did like the 20 biggest hot button issues and then was like, do you think this should happen or this should happen? And then on the end, it told you whether you are more aligned with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And I gave it to the class and I wasn't shocked to find that more people were aligned with the Democratic Party when it was just, here's the issues, here's two stances on it.
But they identified as Republican.
Yeah, and it also didn't change after they found out. And I remember being really frustrated. And I remember my civics teacher very much being like, that's the way it is. Like
Politics is identity.
It's not necessarily identity, but it's not based on policy very often.
No, but it is about, so when I was, maybe about 10 years ago, I was doing a lot of Southern touring and I was trying to get as many queer Southern people to sit down and talk to me and recorded all these conversations. And at one point there was this lovely group of people who were like, we'll just do like a circle in the yard. We'll put a fire on and we'll have a conversation and we can record all of it. It was great. and at a great time. And I remember someone saying that, and I'm gonna use the F slur if allowed.
Not that I'm the person to say yes or no, but I'll say yes.
Will you accept?
Yeah.
And for listeners, here it comes. But he says, "Oh, it's way better to be a fag than a liberal around here." It's like, we can handle your homosexuality. We absolutely cannot handle your liberal
So it's like, as long
perspective.
as you're
So when people are like, "Where do log cabin Republicans come from?" This is where
right
they
there.
come from.
Yeah.
They come from being raised in a culture that is Republican.
And also, as I talk about the DNC, I know I'm not particularly criticizing the DNC as a whole. I'm mostly criticizing them around their presidential campaigns, their presidential platforms, because I do feel like the Democratic Party, from like state level down, does really great work, and they're a little more.
We're talking about the national.
Yeah, I think on the state level, Democrats really work really hard for the things that people need, and I don't think that that is true of the national Democratic Party and the presidential campaigns that they put forward, their policy positions. Because I mean, I maybe this makes me a conspiracy theorist, but in the past 4 months of the Trump presidency, there's been a lot of talk about oligarchy. And I think because it has been so brazen within the Trump presidency, with having Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and all of these other billionaires at his inauguration, things like that, it's a little more in everyone's face. But I don't think the Democratic Party is
For the working class.
different. Like,
Correct.
they're right there with them.
Well, and that's the problem in my opinion, that they've run into.
Yeah.
Is that they used to be the party of the working class, and they are no longer the party of the working class. And you can't say, "Oh, boo-hoo, these billionaires," but like, our billionaires are great.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you
totally.
can't do that.
Yeah.
And so they do have an identity crisis right now, and so much. I'll be honest with you. Part of the reason I think Trump won is because the Democratic Party snuffed out its rebellion.
Yeah.
Trump started with the Tea Party. The Tea Party were the obnoxious wing
Yeah, it was very fringe.
of the Republican Party, according to Republicans. Bernie was the left's Tea Party. And what the RNC didn't do was squelch it. The RNC was like, I guess if...
Well, let's not say they didn't try.
I think they tried to for a minute.
They all didn't. When Trump was first involved in the Republican primaries, no one took him seriously. Everyone thought he would fail.
Agreed. But when he didn't fail, they let him succeed. Bernie was not failing. They made sure he failed.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge difference between the RNC and the DNC. The Republican National Committee was like, we don't like this. We're going to do everything we can to stop it. But if the people want to push it forward, they will. And I mean, I guess, I don't know. I just feel like everything that went around the Hillary-Bernie situation lost the confidence of most of the people on the left in the DNC.
Especially younger generations. Yeah.
And
I mean, if the Democratic Party was half as good at fighting Republicans as they were fighting the left, Trump never would have been president.
It's also something that, I think the thing that I forget about is the Obama situation too, right? Like, was that the Progressive Party, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that was pushing Obama forward? And did they allow that to happen? Versus, and was that happening the reason why they couldn't allow it to happen again with Bernie, because they owed it to Hillary? And that's kind of how I feel about the Democratic Party, is they are constantly in this place where they're like, oh wait, but okay, we let Obama, sorry Hill, our bad. We know it was supposed to be you. We know you earned it. But the groundswell from Obama was just too much.
Yeah.
And we couldn't be racist. Right. And so Hillary says, all right, we'll go next time. And next time goes, and Hillary's like, okay, this is my time. I'm a little more distanced from some of those scandals. Here we go. And then the Bernie swell begins. And the DNC was like, Hill. And she was like, absolutely fucking not. Not for another white guy.
Right.
And that's what happened. I don't know. I just feel like it's always happening amongst 5 people in a room who are deciding where all of the resources are going to go.
Yeah, I mean the DNC doesn't feel like they are committed to democracy. It seems like they are. I mean,
it seems like they don't quite believe in it.
Yeah, it's like, and you can see little bits of it, and especially in what's happening right now. But like, you look at like the whole hashtag vote blue no matter who was definitely created in some 5-person brainstorming session in the DNC headquarters. And it's literally don't think too hard, just vote for us.
Yeah.
Which I think was a losing strategy.
Like there's no, it's a losing strategy. And the fact that they're still doing that.
Yeah. And they won't let it go.
So David Hogg is the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. And if you don't know David Hogg is the survivor of the Parkland High School shooting, who dedicated his life from that moment on to making this country better, particularly when it comes to guns, but not specifically and only exclusively when it comes to guns, and has worked his way up and became vice chair of the Democratic National Committee and has said, hey, I raised $20 million and we're going to start to primary Democrats who are sitting on their asses, basically, and Democrats who are doing the status quo, and is changing the perception within the Democratic National Committee, or was trying to. And the DNC just came out and said, no, don't do that or you got to go.
Yeah, which reeks of anti-democracy. You know, like what is within a democratic representative system, what is the problem with giving people more options?
No, it's this 2-party system it blows my mind, quite frankly, that in a country this size, we really think that 2 options are enough. Like, there's just no way that you can have this many people.
Especially when, like, I'm not a part of the Republican Party. I kind of don't, not that I don't care what they do when it comes to the candidates they put forward, but like, I'm not involved in that process because I don't need to pick the prettiest turd. But within the Democratic Party, they specifically haven't given us an opportunity to choose. The last true unadulterated primary I feel like we've had within the Democratic Party was 2008. Like, you've already brought up how they meddled with the Bernie Hillary situation in 2016, and then you look at the 2020 primaries. The first primary, Pete Buttigieg won. Bernie came in second. The second primary, Bernie won, and then Pete Buttigieg, who had won 50% of the primaries, dropped out to endorse a candidate that wasn't anywhere near the lead. And then everyone else dropped out in order to endorse Joe Biden, and in order to like consolidate support in order to beat Bernie, because Bernie was doing so well.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to ask why. And as a reasonably intelligent person with fairly decent cognitive ability, I like can't think of a real reason except for oligarchy, corporate control. Like, those are the only reasons I can think of why they would need this establishment Democrat to be in place, rather than a person who is pushing for better labor practices, higher minimum wage, healthcare for all things that are good for the majority of Americans, but not good for the insurance industry, corporations. Like, that's the only thing I can come up with.
I'm going to play a little bit of the other side, but the same.
Sure.
What if it's not that deep?
It's just like, he's our friend.
Yeah. What if it's not that deep? And Bernie's always been the guy on the edge who's like, you're wasting too much. You know, like, Bernie's always been on the fringe.
Yeah.
And has never bowed to the establishment. And the establishment really likes you to bow to it. Which is why a Buttigieg bowed. I mean, Buttigieg military service. Like if you're going to ask the guy to be a team player, he's going to be a team player, particularly as a newcomer on the federal level, right? I feel like it's as simple as who gets invited to the parties, the people who are out at other events, the people who are doing the politicking and not the actual work, the people who are more concerned about the elections than the legislation. Like, I feel like those people were taking care of their friends. Like, and I'm sure that it's influenced by corporate spending. I'm not saying that. Obviously it is. You know, obviously anybody pushing back against corporate profit is going to get cut out. And I think that that's the key, is that it doesn't matter if it's Democrats, it doesn't matter if it's Republicans.
Right.
Whoever is going to cut the profits of the corporate and the big business structures is going to be the candidate that nobody wants.
Yeah. No, definitely.
And that is the problem. And what happened here, I think Republicans somehow got convinced that the Republican base got convinced that Trump was not for the global elite, which is
when he's the worst out of all of them.
So I had hoped that we were going to be on the cutting edge of a regrouping with the DNC.
It seems like at this point it's going to be a hostile takeover if it happens at all.
I don't think it's going to happen at all. Their response to David Hogg, and specifically his plan, was to primary incumbents in safe seats that he deems ineffective. So basically saying, listen, you're a Democrat in a blue district. They're going to elect a Democrat, and so I'm going to primary you. Not in purple areas, in blue. This is a safe way to light a fire under the ass of some incumbents. And the DNC was like, absolutely not, kid. Get the fuck out of here. And this young man, who's 26 now, has done more for awareness and bringing the youth vote into the DNC than anyone else, I think, in the committee. I mean, obviously AOC is incredibly effective, but this is somebody who's not in an elected office. And so to treat their own like that, instead of just listening, I hope he starts a third party.
I think but also I think that is a losing battle to start a third party. I hope. I mean, the thing
it has to happen. It can't just be these.
But it has to happen. The thing is like it can't really happen until the Republican Party really dies.
It's not going to die. You have to kill it.
Yeah, but
you can't kill it if everyone's playing on the same team.
But I agree. But if it's a 50-50 split, and then you split one half into 25-25.
But I think that for the same reason that we talk about the Democrats and the Republicans are the same because they're oligarchs on both sides. I think that the third party pulls the proletariat out and makes a third party that doesn't. Every time we say third party, we're like, oh, it's going to cut the Democrats in half. And what I think is happening is the groundswell of class and wage disparity and all of that is going to cause a third party that will pull 50% from Republican, 50% from Democrat, because it will pull the poor people or the working class voter.
No, I agree. And I've always had, I think there is a political platform to run on that could do exactly that. I would, like, if I were to run, I would run independent. I would run on a heavy Americana, visually themed campaign, and you run on populist ideas that help people,
like
healthcare for all. People are truly having a hard time living in America,
literally living, staying alive.
Yeah, and the reasons that they're having trouble is because they don't have healthcare. They're in massive amounts of medical debt. There isn't an opportunity to better yourself through higher education. And all of those things, if you were to run on a platform that would make the average person's life easier and more fruitful, I feel like there is a way to do that. But I also kind of think that's where Bernie was in 2016. You can look, there's kind of a statistic where of an amount
Do you
Bernie
think that
supporters,
Bernie would have beat Trump in 2016?
Yes.
I also agree with that.
But I think there's also a statistic of an amount of Bernie supporters that jumped ship from the Democratic Party when he lost the primaries to go over to Trump. And I feel like a lot of kind of centrist liberal people use that as a way of demonizing Bernie. Like, oh, people who like Bernie like Trump too, which means Bernie must be a monster like Trump.
Right.
Which I don't think is true. I just think, especially in that moment, the Democratic Party was pushing forward like the most establishment candidate you could ever imagine. And then Trump won on this
Anti-establishment,
drain the swamp. And there were plenty of people who could see through it to the monster that Trump was, but not everyone.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I feel like that truly was the tipping point. And I think if the Democratic Party truly reinvested in working class people and young people, I think the biggest mistake in them pushing back against David Hogg, like you already said, he has done more so than anything to engage young people. And in the same way, people had the idea of like Bernie supporters going up to Trump being a derogative against Bernie. People will sit there and go, young people are lazy. They don't want to come out and vote. And it's like, there's nothing, it's a zero-sum game for them. Their lives are still going to be challenging for the reasons they're challenging, whether Trump is there or not, whether it's Trump or whether it's a Democratic candidate winning. And I know there are issues within there like trans people, queer people, people of color, but it's hard. You have to give people a reason to go out and vote. I mean, you look at the last election in 2024, and there were, out of the amount of eligible voters, 90 million eligible voters didn't win. 75,000 voted for Kamala Harris, 77,000 million.
Yeah.
75 million voted for Kamala Harris, 77 million voted for Donald Trump, and 90 million people stayed home. There's so often this conversation about the Democratic Party needing to pull people over from voting for Trump. That's always, we got to convince those Trump voters to vote.
You have to motivate.
Yeah,
people who aren't
those
showing
people up. Are the idea that it's this, like, there's in the spectrum of Trump, or like right to left, there's a delineation of like, this is where the line where people go from Trump to Kamala to Trump to Kamala. It's like, it's not that.
And they do refuse to acknowledge their role in disenfranchising their own voters.
It always frustrates me when it comes to, like, whenever I'm like, you have to give young people something to vote for. Well, they don't come out and vote anyway. I'm like, that's kind of the point. Oh, like the older generations, they vote.
Correct. So that's why they wanted a cop. They're like, if it's going to be a vote of color, let's have her at least have a cop history.
But also, like, if they're coming, if you can count on them, forget about them. Meaning, not like if you have a restaurant and this group of people is coming and this group of people isn't coming, you give those people a reason to come. If these people are going to come no matter what, you cater to these people so everyone will come. You don't cater to someone who's already a guaranteed vote. If they're going to vote for you no matter what you do something that makes other people vote for you. But when it comes to AOC, I understand, and I have that fear as well, because I mean, a lot of homophobia is based on misogyny, so I like have a glimpse into how misogynistic our country is, and also I see it all around, so I like have a similar fear. But at the same time, I think if a candidate came out and was like, I'm going to do healthcare for all, I'm going to make higher education affordable, I'm going to make the public school systems better, I'm going to tax billionaires.
But what would you do once they were assassinated?
Well, right. I just feel like if anyone came with those kind of things, it would be a landslide.
Those ideas never get out of local politics. This is the part where it's like, I think this is why I'm excited for somebody young to do something new, because it is so entrenched. You hear this I heard it when I lived in Buffalo, like knowing who was in, they called Erie County the Wild Wild West of Western New York, of New York State politics, because it's like entrenched in like South Buffalo, old boys club, Irish guys who pass it down to someone's nephew, and then it's somebody like, it trickles down. The lack of democracy trickles down to your local government and figuring that part out. And those ideas don't make it up the chain because those ideas won't make it on a national level because those ideas will not get funded by the corporations that you need the money from to win the elections ever since Citizen United.
Yeah, but I mean, AOC wins elections without. I feel like the
AOC wins a very specific election.
I kind of don't agree with that.
Okay.
I
That's
don't
good.
agree
We need
that
more of that.
corporate money is this like superpower when it comes to elections. It has been because there's no example of doing it without it. There just isn't. There isn't an example of someone being like, there's never been a candidate for presidency who's been like, and I'm not doing corporate money. To say it wouldn't work it's kind of unfounded because there's never been an opportunity to say that it like, yeah, the person with the most corporate money tends to win but the other
The person with the most
also
money tends to win.
yeah. But I think the reason those policy positions like healthcare for all, things like that, don't work on a national level is because it's not because people don't vote for them. It's because they're not given the opportunity to.
Yes.
Like when have we ever been able to vote for a candidate who is running on a platform of healthcare for all?
Obama?
Yeah, that's true. And he won.
When Kamala was like, I'm going to make sure that you can all buy a house. That's when I knew we were fucked.
Why
That
so?
was the most out of touch thing
Yeah. It's like, how could you
I've ever heard in my life. And that is when I seriously began to question my affiliation with the Democratic Party.
Mm.
That's what they came up with as the appeal to everyday Americans who cannot afford rent in any city in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Working, you can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment on minimum wage in any place now.
I hear that statistic a lot, and I'm just like, where's the place where I could afford any apartment?
Right.
On minimum wage.
Yeah.
Is that the thing? Could I make $7.75 an hour and
there's nowhere.
Then why are we using the statistic of a 2-bedroom apartment?
Yeah.
Like when I hear a statistic, like I feel like it's a losing argument because when people are like, when I hear, oh, you can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment anywhere on minimum wage, I'm like, people think could?
I think when you say 2-bedroom, you imply family. And so they're saying like you can't build a family anymore.
Yeah.
And building a family is key on the populace list of things to do is to make all the babies. So I think they're trying to appeal to that.
Yeah.
But that was certainly like, that was just for me the moment where I was just like, I've never seen, like, it's just so out of touch. The Democratic Committee is so out of touch with what it's like to be an everyday American at this point.
And also, like, when you say something, I'm going to make sure everyone can afford a house, that's terrifying to anyone who already owns a house.
How do you mean?
How do you make it so that everyone can afford to buy a house without lowering property values? You know what I mean?
I guess so.
Either you're going to make the minimum wage $50 an hour so that people could...
I can't believe no one ran on raising the federal minimum wage.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like Bernie has been running, or there's been this movement for a $15 minimum wage for the last 15 years.
No, now it's too late. Now it's got to be 20.
Yeah, now it'll get done in 5 more years, and everyone will be like, "We did it!" But it's like that $15 we were fighting for in 2010 is $35.
Yeah,
I mean, I would take it one step farther.
Okay, all right.
Than David Hogg. I don't think I'm like, yeah, let's primary safe Democrats, but I think the best way to gain ground and beat Republicans, I think we should be running super like
far left.
Yeah, rather than primarying safe seats that we know we're going to lose, let's throw a crazy leftist in the mix and see how it works out. You know what I mean?
I like that idea.
If we're going to lose anyway, let's figure it out. Let's try something.
I'm here for this.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
That's a really smart idea.
In these like definite red seats, let's see if you throw someone up there who is let's raise
Who's
them
like kind of like a democratic libertarian, like not a democratic socialist, but a
Yeah.
democratic libertarian.
But I think if AOC ran on her platform against any Republican anywhere, she would win.
What's her gun take?
I'm not sure.
It would depend on. It would depend guns. Guns would depend. That would be the thing. Because that's the thing that like really riles up
I feel
those
like
red districts.
I feel like the gun debate is starting to enter the kind of abortion conversation, where obviously the conversation around abortion and abortion access is important right now, but I'm speaking of like before all of this, when Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. 80% of Americans thought that people should have access to abortion.
Yes.
But it was still viewed as this 50-50 issue because politics made it that way. Republicans know that there is, of that 20%, a lot of those people in that 20%, a lot of those people within that 20% are going to vote on a single issue, and it is abortion. They're going to vote for the candidate that is pro-life, so that's why the Republicans add that to their policies.
I think that same percentage feels the same way about guns.
20%?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm saying. I don't think the gun reform issue is this 50-50 thing. I think more than half of people know that there is a need for there to be a change in gun laws. I mean, you have to think, like, since 2016, it's been 11 years of new voters in the system aging into voting age that
have been shot at.
That have potentially been shot at, are seeing people their own age, peers on TV being shot at, and have spent their entire childhood doing drills just in case. It's about activating those people.
The doing the drills just in case part just fucked me up a little bit.
Yeah.
That's like, because I was thinking about, oh yeah, we used to do tornado drills. We used to do like
fire drills is all we did.
Storm drills.
Right.
Because these are things that are out of your control, and you need to be prepared for things that are out of your control. But the gun thing is, we'll have to do a gun episode.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But I just think trying to shaming a generation of young people, and by young people I mean 40 and under, millennials and Gen Z, shaming them for not coming out to vote when what you're offering them is Trump or some 80-year-old rich person who spent their entire lives in politics, who has no idea what it means to actually pay a student loan payment, who has no idea what it means to have absolutely no chance of ever owning a home in their lifetime. Like, they're not going to come out and vote for that person.
What I feel like, I want the DNC to be like, we don't care what the federal law says. We are going to set term limits for all of our candidates.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like something where all Democrats are going to go, we understand the importance of new voices in political discourse.
But we're literally seeing that the DNC doesn't want that in this moment.
Correct.
I mean, when it comes down to it, I'm really just hoping that the DNC really looks inward and also outward and creates a strategy that is a winning strategy. And it's winning because it's beneficial to everyone and all people within the United States.
Well, and redefining who they are and who their base is. And I guess my moral of the story is this immediate response to David Hogg and James Carville, who I used to kind of really love actually as a Louisiana person. Calling a kid a twerp for thinking differently or like pushing the expectations that they have for their party is just gross. And it's not the way to do it. And it's not going to win any hearts and minds. And it's not going to engage young voters. And it's the DNC just did the exact opposite of what they needed to respond to this. And for those reasons, I'm out.
You're never voting for the DNC again.
I'm just having a really hard time
I get that.
Identifying
I hope that
with their stupidity. Like you're identifying with that.
I mean, through my experiences being around older people, whenever I present my opinions, I'm often met with you just don't understand.
Sure.
And I hope that I never become a person as I age that thinks simply because I'm older that the experiences of someone who has gotten to the age of 25, 30, 40, their experiences and their perspective is just as valid as mine. And time, that extra 20, 30, 40 years does not bring twice, 3 times, 4 times the amount of wisdom. I think it's simply a perspective thing. And I think the DNC is showing that they are untrusting of people that aren't themselves and people who don't look like them.
I think that I think there is something to be said for experience. But I don't think that means that conversation shouldn't be had. When you bring an idea to somebody who's older and more experienced and they say, "Oh, you just don't understand." For me, that's when I go, "Oh, explain it to me then."
Mhm.
Because I'll lean in on that. And then the more you explain to me and the more I counter that I do in fact understand,
Mhm.
I don't think anybody should be blessed with just, "Oh, you think it's real. Great." No, challenge it. If you bring an idea to me, and I work with kids, I'm almost 50. I work with young adults all the time. They bring me an idea and I go, and then they're like, "Ah," and I'll explain why. And I'll be like, "Well, what about this, this, and this?" And then they go, "Oh, I never thought about it that way."
I also don't think the only measure of experience is time.
No, but
I
with
mean,
time
when
is
you
the opportunity for more experience. Like,
when
I don't think that it's the only one, but I think that, a person who has lived their life in their one small town, who's never left, who does the same thing over and over again at 60, probably has less experience
Mhm.
than a 30-year-old who's lived in 4 different communities and has traveled even just this country,
Right.
for sure. But I'm not saying that. I just think that with time, there is more chance for experience. Not that
Right.
everyone has that experience, but there's more
But
time for
also
it.
you look at Carville, he's been living in a mansion
Mhm.
since Reagan.
Correct.
That isn't that is
No.
I'm sorry, that is an experience that
No.
I value.
No.
Then he's talking down to a person like David Hogg,
Yep.
whose experience is shooter drills, being shot at
Yeah.
in their school, not being able to afford college, having the people around him, their lives decimated by college debt, watching his friends and family members' lives being ruined by medical debt. I would argue that David Hogg has more valuable experience at 25 than that person has at 80
I
in this moment.
I think that in this moment you're correct. I think that James Carville was completely outdated and antiquated in his response, and I think it showed an arrogance of someone at the top of a party that is exactly the problem that we're all talking about.
Mm.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm just not ready or in a place to lump all people over 60 together or all people over 20 together. I don't want to do that any more than I want to say all gays do this and all lesbians do this and all trans people do this. Like, to me, it's just a broad stroke.
Mm.
And so setting an age restriction for something like voting feels like a very broad stroke.
Mhm.
And I would love to see more intergenerational partnerships and more intergenerational working. Like, James Carville had a great opportunity to go, "Interesting thought, kid. Why don't we go talk about it?"
Right. And I guess the reason I will stand here and say people over this age shouldn't be able to vote is because that is the energy that young people get from the older generation.
Yeah.
It's you just don't understand and like I'm willing to be argumentative and push back in a way that is going to upset older people because
But you're not ready to be in a position to say, "Maybe I don't understand."
what do you mean?
Well, you said you're ready to be argumentative and push back, but are you also ready to learn? Because there will
I
be
learn every day.
but there will be situations where someone says you don't understand, and you really don't understand. And you don't understand because
But the thing is I get told constantly I don't understand because I'm only this age, where people that are 70, James Carville never gets told he doesn't understand.
he's got a wife.
Right. Who's a Republican.
Who's a Republican.
Oy. I mean,
I also think that part of this is very particular to our community.
Mhm.
We live around a lot of people who are older than us.
Mhm.
And we lack a lot of diversity in discussion here because of the prohibitive cost of living. And there aren't a lot of young people here. And so I think that your specific experience has only come from one way.
Yeah.
And
But
you
also-
haven't had enough time with a 21-year-old telling you how shit is when you get to go, oh, actually, you just don't understand. And once you get a little more of that,
A substantial portion of my close friends are in their early 20s.
and do you get to say,
I learn from them every day, more so than I learn from older people.
but do they learn from you?
Yeah, of course.
And you're the older person.
Yeah, but I learn from them more than they learn from me. I guarantee it.
Possibly, but it still happens. And I think that's the point. Because what you're coming across is like there's nothing to learn from these people. And all they're doing is telling you.
I'm not saying there's nothing to learn. I'm saying they're beating our heads. They're beating us over the head with everything that they want. They think their opinions are the most valid and they beat us over the head with it every day. I'm not saying I'm not willing to learn. I'm saying they're not willing. You're saying like I'm not willing to learn. They're not willing to not let me learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it.
I'm sure this episode will help.
Yeah. No, I love when people come for me.
I liked the.
But if you are one of those older people who's just getting mad at what I'm saying, like actually take some time to think about it. Think about whether when you come across someone in their 20s, 30s, 40s, do you actually listen and try to understand and recognize that they have a different perspective because they have different
lived
experiences than you, and just because you have 30 more years of experience doesn't make yours more valid, because your experience of you being in your 20s is different than the people who are experiencing their 20s now. I just watched a TikTok of someone who said that, like, I was talking about buying a house with my parents and they said, I don't know why you're looking at these expensive $300,000, $400,000 house. You should be looking at like $100,000 starter homes. They don't even know they don't exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore.
I guess what I'm saying is it's the older people that are closed off to learning. And they're constantly reinforced with the idea that they don't have to.
I think, again, that is true, but a general statement.
Sure.
And I just am holding hope for those glimmers of understanding enlightened elders who don't believe that they have to hang on to everything they have. And they are willing to mentor. I think that if we made mentorship cool again and not creepy, that
right,
you know what I mean? That there are people out there that you can learn and have an exchange. I just fully will die on the hill of a diverse group of brains working together with varying levels of experience and life experience is going to come up with the best result for everybody.
But I agree, and I know I push back in kind of an extreme angle with these ideas.
You're an ageist, you mean?
No, I'm kidding. Sure. But like, I feel like I agree with you, and I feel like the people with the most to learn about being diverse is older people. The people who have the most to learn about bringing people in, and it's apparent. Look at the Democratic Party.
Older white people.
What we're talking about. Yes, fully older white people. But it's like,
not old people.
Look at what we're specifically talking about. It's the Democratic Party where it is exceedingly people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s telling everyone else they don't know what they're talking about, telling everyone else their opinion isn't valid, and that they should just get in line and get on board with what they decide they're doing.
And telling everyone that their opinion doesn't matter, and also telling everyone that there is no room for a new way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the part. You're correct. I wholeheartedly believe that the DNC is too old, it's too white, it's too out of touch, and it's too ingrained in, frankly, sucking its own dick. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's what it is. And I would just like to see a little bit more of a disruption that is intergenerational.
Right.
I think, because I just don't believe that there aren't progressive people who are, I mean, and this is probably because I'm getting older and being like, I work really hard to try to stay aware of the struggle of it all. And fortunately, I'm broke, so I get some of the struggle, right? Like, I'm not a wealthy person in this community, so I get to relate to that component. I'm not, the poorest by any means, but I'm, we're not buying houses here. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I just want to see a little bit more of overall diversity all around. Mm-hmm. Color, class, race, ethnicity, age, religious belief.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess before anyone decides to shit on me for my experiences and my opinions of the older population when it comes to politics, is like, there's no need, like, I don't have to be inclusive to your exclusivity. I don't have to include you when you're the people who are being exclusive.
Correct.
It'd be better.
Better.
And I know a lot of people are going to say that, like, my opinions are based on me. Like, I think people in their 30s and 40s should be running politics because I'm in my late 30s, but it truly isn't that. I truly think when I'm 50, 60, I think I will still agree that the majority of the people with the largest say should be people in their 30s and 40s, because that era of your life is when you have the most to lose, the most to gain, the experience of what it's like coming in, and using that experience and to craft what your life is going to be like moving forward.
I'm happy to have some folks that age.
Yeah.
I just don't want them all to be one of anything.
I think they should majority be.
I don't think, well, but who's going to make the babies then?
I mean,
we have to keep our humanity alive.
no
and
one
if
is
all the
having babies until we can make money and survive and afford eggs and the whole thing. But when it comes down to it,
Also, people in their 30s, no disrespect, but like, no.
What do you mean?
Wait till you're 40 and then you'll know.
Oh, she's one of them. Cut the camera.
That's a scene. All right. Well, thank you for listening
Yeah.
to Queer Times, everybody. These
Mhm.
are Queer Times.
Yeah.
I'm Kristen Becker. You can find me at Kristen Becker Comedy.
Yeah.
This is
I'm Harrison Fish. You can find me at Harrison Fish.
And
Yeah.
obviously, subscribe, follow, review. Please review. Give
Yeah,
it 5
rate,
stars. It's on Apple Podcasts. We're on
Mhm.
Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're on all the things. Tell your friends. Comment. Share. Spread the word. And we'll see you next week. Love you. Queerly.
Bye.
Queer is in.